picture a typical tech commercial. You know the exact vibe I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. Usually some gentle acoustic guitar in the background.
Exactly, gentle guitar, maybe some soft piano, and you see all these smiling faces across different continents, grandparents waving to toddlers through a glowing screen, and then that warm voiceover kicks in and says something like, "We bring people together."
It's incredibly enticing, honestly. It feels like this technology is the ultimate glue holding our totally fragmented world together.
Right, and we buy it. Literally, we buy it. But for this deep dive, we are exploring a perspective that completely shatters that cozy narrative.
We really are.
We're looking at a teaching titled The Spiritual Harm of Mass Media from the Plum Village app. And Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh makes this honestly radical case that the very devices we bring into our homes to connect us are actually the ultimate dividers.
It's a jarring shift in perspective, especially because we are so steeped in that marketing you just mentioned. We inherently crave connection, and screens present themselves as this frictionless bridge to get there. Yeah, exactly.
But Thich Nhat Hanh is asking us to look past the advertising, to really examine the actual psychological reality of having these devices in our space. And this isn't just your standard, complaint about screen time.
Right, it goes way deeper.
Much deeper. It's a profound look at human perception, how we manufacture our desires, and how we unconsciously construct the psychological environments we actually live in.
So let's jump right into the core of that illusion. He paints a picture of a really common scenario. Father comes home from work, a child comes home from school. They've been apart all day long.
Right.
They haven't had a single moment for one another, no real conversation. Then dinner finishes and they have this tiny, precious window of time before bed. And instead of using it to connect, what do? They turn on the TV and just glue their eyes to it.
Yeah, they are physically in the same room, sitting inches apart even, but they're in completely different worlds.
It's like parallel living, right?
Yeah.
Parallel living masquerading as connection. That's a great way to put it. We really have to look closely at the mechanism of what's happening in that moment. After a long day of navigating all the demands of work and school, the brain is just tired.
Oh, completely fried.
Exactly. And the screen offers a very specific kind of relief. It requires zero energetic output.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's this passive consumption state, it actually acts as a numbing agent.
Right, you aren't unwinding together, you are checking out together.
Yes. The marketing tells us the living room television is a communal hearth. But the reality is that it often functions as a wedge. It splits the attention of the family into these separate, totally isolated silos of consumption.
And that dynamic extends far beyond just binge-watching sitcoms or whatever. He points specifically to the news cycle, too.
He does, yeah.
He brings up a channel called France Info, which apparently blasts the latest news every 10 to 15 minutes. And we live in an era where we are constantly bombarded. Alerts fly at us all day long on our phones.
Every 5 minutes, it feels like.
Right. And his argument is that sitting there, absorbing this constant rapid-fire stream, fundamentally disconnects us from our immediate surroundings. But, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
I have to push back a little here. Isn't staying informed about the world an actual need? Like, if France Info or any breaking news app is giving me updates, I'm being an educated, engaged citizen. How does that translate into a force that divides us?
That is the big question, right? It really comes down to the difference between active synthesis and passive bombardment. Thich Nhat Hanh isn't suggesting that knowing what's happening in the world is inherently bad or unnecessary. The danger lies in the physiological and psychological response to that constant 10-minute drip. When news arrives nonstop like that, you aren't critically analyzing it. You aren't using it to foster meaningful dialogue.
You're just absorbing it.
Right, you're being pushed into a state of chronic, low-level hyperarousal. Every alert triggers a tiny stress response. It just floods the nervous system with cortisol.
So you're basically in a perpetual state of reaction.
Precisely. And when your nervous system is trapped in that reactionary loop, you physically cannot be present for the person sitting next to you.
Wow. Yeah.
Because true connection, the kind that builds real relationships and emotional intimacy, requires profound presence. You have to be anchored in the current moment. The 24/7 news drip is designed to pull your consciousness out of the room and into a state of global anxiety.
It hijacks your presence.
It absolutely hijacks it. Therefore, the compulsive urge to monitor that stream isn't civic duty, right? It's a false need. And it's a false need that destroys your capacity for real connection.
When we talk about false needs, that really hits at the economic engine behind all of this, doesn't it? If these screens and constant broadcasts are actively pulling us away from our lives, why do we keep buying them?
That's the trap.
Why do we upgrade our phones every single year? Thich Nhat Hanh argues that we are essentially conditioned by our environment to chase things that don't actually serve us. We work like a Trojan, just exhausting ourselves, just to afford desires that are completely manufactured.
The psychology of how those desires are manufactured is just fascinating. Because advertising doesn't just sell you a product, right? It sells you a deficit.
Oh, that's interesting.
It creates a false idea of what constitutes a baseline for a good life. It convinces you that without this specific object, you are somehow falling behind.
Right, like you're missing out.
Exactly. You completely lose sight of what your body and mind actually need for health and stability, and instead, you channel all your life energy into acquiring things that someone else told you are necessary.
The examples he gives from the Plum Village Mindfulness Practice Center highlight the pure absurdity of this. It's so funny.
Oh, they are great.
Because even in a monastery, people want comforts. But they stop and ask, like, which of these comforts actually serve our best interests?
Right.
Do we really need an automated door that requires you to say, "It's me, Sister Tungiyam, unlock," just to walk into a room?
Or do we genuinely need an electric toothbrush?
Or an electric knife just to cut carrots. I mean, an electric carrot knife.
I know, when you isolate the behavior like that, it sounds comical. But think about the underlying math of that exchange.
What do you mean?
Well, we are willing to expend massive amounts of our finite life energy, working longer hours, taking on debt, enduring high-stress jobs, and for what? To purchase a device that saves us the marginal physical effort of moving our wrist to slice a carrot.
Oh, wow. Yeah, when you put it that way, it sounds insane.
Right. We trade our peace of mind for the illusion of convenience. And that trade actively destroys our physical and mental health because of the chronic stress required to sustain the lifestyle.
It's the ultimate modern smart home treadmill.
Yes.
You buy the smart fridge, the voice-activated lights, the electric carrot knife. You get a tiny dopamine hit from the novelty of the convenience. But to afford that entire ecosystem of automated living, you're taking on a massive cortisol load.
A huge load.
You're working longer hours, you're worrying about the mortgage, you're stressing over the software upgrades. We are convinced this technology is eliminating friction from our lives. But really, it's just replacing physical friction with deep systemic financial and psychological anxiety.
And the engine driving that entire treadmill is the comparison trap. Thich Nhat Hanh explicitly warns against looking at others and thinking, they have it. If I don't have it, I don't have happiness.
Right.
Human beings are incredibly susceptible to social contagion. From an evolutionary standpoint, we are wired to look at the resources our neighbors have to ensure we aren't falling behind in survival.
Sure, that makes sense.
But modern advertising completely weaponizes that instinct. We see the highly curated, polished outside of someone else's life, their massive TV, their seamless smart home, and we automatically assume it equates to internal joy.
But no one can tell for sure if what their neighbor has is actually making them happy. That neighbor with the fully automated screen-filled house might be totally miserable. They might be completely estranged from their spouse sitting right next to them on the couch. We end up envying the exact possessions that are turning their lives upside down.
It's tragic, really.
It is. We adopt their false needs as our own, completely blind to the fact that we're opting into their suffering.
That is the critical pivot point in mindfulness practice, though. It's recognizing the difference between the noise of social expectation and the quiet reality of our true needs.
Which are what, exactly?
True needs are simple. Emotional connection, physical health, shelter, spiritual grounding. Everything beyond that requires intense scrutiny.
And that scrutiny really has to extend to how these objects physically alter our living spaces, too, because he introduces a concept here that completely flips how we understand our homes.
Oh, the container concept.
Yes. It's this question of who contains whom. Because normally I'd look at the architecture of my life and say, my house is the container. I bought a television, I carried it through the front door, and I put it on a stand in the corner. The TV is an object inside the box of my house.
There's the standard Newtonian way of viewing our environment. Physical objects inside physical boundaries. But Thich Nhat Hanh is talking about the phenomenology of a space. How we actually experience reality.
Okay, unpacking that a bit.
He argues that our mind and our perception actually envelops the living environment. The environment isn't a static box. It's a dynamic atmosphere created by our collective attention.
Which means if I bring a television into that space and it's constantly on, it changes the fundamental physics of the room.
Exactly.
It's projecting noise, light, and a constant stream of external narratives. It becomes the dominant psychological weather of the home. So if the TV is dictating the acoustic environment and monopolizing the attention of everyone in the room, the TV isn't just an object inside the house.
No.
The TV is actually enveloping the house.
Yes. You've moved into its container.
Wait, really? So I'm living inside the TV's world rather than my own home?
Effectively, yes. The television acts as a gravitational force that pulls human attention outward, away from the self and away from the family. Because everyone living under that roof has to tolerate that atmosphere, the boundary of their experience is no longer the walls of the home.
Wow.
The boundary is the edge of the broadcast. The screen is dictating the terms of reality.
That completely dismantles our illusion of control. We think because we hold the remote or because we paid the credit card bill for the device, we own it. But its psychological footprint is so massive that it owns the space.
Right.
We end up living inside the environment it generates rather than cultivating the environment we intended.
This is exactly why he uses the language of invasion to describe bringing these technologies into the home. He uses two highly specific historical metaphors that are just brilliant.
The first one is the classic Trojan Horse scenario, right?
Yes.
We gladly drag this massive shiny screen right into the center of our living room because we think it's a prize. We think it signifies status, entertainment, and modern living.
We celebrate it.
Right. But we are completely blind to the fact that by bringing it inside our walls, we've just imported the very forces that will destroy our peace from within.
It's the perfect metaphor. And the second one is this incredible story from ancient China involving King Fuchai of the state of Wu and his rival, King Gujian of the state of Yu.
Okay, tell us about that one.
So Gujian knew he couldn't defeat the powerful state of Wu through brute military force. They were too strong. So he utilized a completely different strategy. He reluctantly offered a legendary beauty named Shi to King Fuchai.
And King Fuchai is thrilled.
Overjoyed. He thinks he's won the ultimate prize. He brings Shi into his inner sanctum, fully believing she is his possession to enjoy.
But it's a trap.
A complete trap. Because she is there, constantly pulling his attention and causing distraction, his focus on governing vanishes. The state of Wu basically rots from the inside out and eventually keels over, allowing Gujin to easily defeat him.
Wow. And Thich Nhat Hanh draws a direct line between Shi, the Trojan Horse, and the television.
He does. We bring the screen into our house with the best of intentions. We want to bring joy and entertainment to our children. But in doing so, we unwittingly invite an enemy into our sanctuary.
He specifically says it brings the destructive armies of broadcasting companies right into our living rooms.
Right.
And their weapons aren't swords. Their weapons are manufactured desires.
That is the core mechanism of the invasion. Broadcasting companies and tech platforms are in the business of harvesting attention and generating cravings.
Right. That's their whole business model.
Exactly. And once those cravings take root in the mind, the family unit shatters. The father pursues his own specific path to happiness based on the desires the screen planted in him. The mother pursues hers. The children chase theirs.
So they're living under the same roof, but they are completely alienated from one another.
Yes, individually chasing shadows of happiness dictated by advertisers.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, but also a bit intense. I mean, comparing a Netflix binge or the evening news to an invading army conquering a kingdom, isn't that a bit extreme? It's just a screen, right? It's not physical violence.
It does sound dramatic if we only think of warfare in physical terms. But consider what is actually being conquered here. The territory isn't land. The territory is your attention, your time, and the emotional bandwidth that would otherwise be dedicated to your family.
Okay, I see.
When you have a family sitting in the same room for years, silently staring at a screen instead of engaging with each other, their life force is being diverted. Just like King Fuchai lost his kingdom because his life force was diverted by distraction, the kingdom of the family falls when its members' attention is entirely captured by external broadcasts.
Wow.
The physical walls of the house might still be standing, but the sanctuary of connection has absolutely been breached. The intensity of the language is necessary to wake us up to a slow-motion loss of intimacy that we have completely normalized.
When you frame it as attention being the actual territory under siege, the extreme language makes total sense. It is an invasion of our intention.
Precisely.
So if we accept this, if our gadgets act as Trojan horses carrying armies of distraction into our homes, what is the defense strategy? Do we have to throw the TV out the window and live completely off the grid?
No, and this is where the philosophy proves how practical it really is.
Yeah.
Total asceticism isn't the only answer. Even in Plum Village, which is a highly dedicated mindfulness practice center, they do have a few televisions.
Wait, really? They have TVs?
They do. They aren't pretending the technology doesn't exist.
But they don't let the Trojan Horse open its doors.
Exactly. Thich Nhat Hanh says the enemies cannot harm them because they have deployed the ultimate safeguard, mindfulness.
So how does that actually work in practice?
They apply a radical layer of intentionality. They do not turn on the television to be passively washed over by the France info news cycle or to absorb whatever desires advertisers are pushing that day. They use the televisions for a highly specific, predetermined purpose,
Which is
to watch Dharma talks, which are spiritual teachings.
a way he frames this is just incredible. He says, "We make our TVs practice mindfulness and meditation with us."
It's brilliant, isn't it? It completely reverses the power dynamic. The TV is no longer enveloping the house. It is no longer dictating the psychological weather of the room.
Right.
Because the practitioners are fiercely guarding their attention and staying anchored in their true needs, the television is subdued. It is stripped of its ability to act as an invading force and returns to being exactly what it was always supposed to be, just a tool.
We make the TV practice mindfulness. That image of forcing the technology to bend to your intention rather than the other way around is so powerful.
It really is.
And it brings this entire conversation right back to you listening to this deep dive right now. We've covered some intense philosophical ground today. We started by looking at the hard reality that, despite the warm glow of the commercials, staring at screens often divides us rather than unites us.
Yeah, it traps us in that parallel living, just like the father and child sitting in silence.
Exactly. We've also deconstructed the exhausting trap of working like a Trojan just to afford false needs. We sacrifice the actual needs of our body and mind to buy the electric carrot knives and smart home gadgets that ultimately just deliver layers of financial and psychological stress.
And we ventured into the reality of how our perceptions construct our environment. A demanding piece of technology changes the physics of a room. It isn't just an object inside your house.
Right. It can easily become a Trojan horse that envelops your home, dictates the atmosphere, and allows broadcasting armies to conquer your family's attention with manufactured cravings.
But the central revelation here is your own agency. You are not helpless against the invasion. You have the power to dictate the terms of your living environment.
Yes.
By applying rigorous intentionality and mindfulness, you get to decide what crosses the boundary into your mind. You can safeguard your sanctuary.
Which leaves us with one final thought to mull over. Thich Nhat Hanh showed us that it is entirely possible to tame a television by intentionally making it practice mindfulness with you. But what would it look like if you applied that exact same intentionality to the smartphone sitting in your pocket right now?
That's the real challenge.
Could we intentionally reprogram the very algorithms that were designed to distract us, forcing those devices to protect our attention instead? The next time you see a commercial with an acoustic guitar promising that a new piece of tech will bring you closer together, look closely at that glowing screen and ask yourself who is really containing whom.